Welcome to the module on accessing files with Microsoft Graph. In this module, you're going to learn how to access files in OneDrive, both reading and writing files, and how to traverse relationships between files and users. Hi, I'm Andrew Connell. I'm a Microsoft MVP in the area of Microsoft 365 development. I have a lot of experience with SharePoint development, Microsoft Graph, Microsoft Teams, developing add-ins for Microsoft Office, as well as developing applications for Microsoft Identity, including Azure Active Directory. This video is the first in a series of videos on this Microsoft Learning module. This video is also part of a playlist that includes all the videos that are associated with this module, so you can watch them in order. The playlist and all its included videos are associated with a Microsoft Learning module that includes hands-on lab exercises and additional resources. Check the notes for this video and the associated playlist for more information and where to find the Microsoft Learning module. Okay, let's get started. OneDrive is the files hub in Office 365. People work with files in different contexts, such as Microsoft Teams, Groups, SharePoint, and more. And with OneDrive, users can access these files no matter where they're stored, and Microsoft Graph enables you to use a single API to work with them. Files in Office 365 are stored in drives, and users can store files in a personal drive, their OneDrive, or in a shared drive powered by a Microsoft document library. OneDrive's flexibility lets users collaborate however it works best for them, and users can share links to files, copy or move files to team drives, or even attach OneDrive files to mail messages in Outlook. In this first section, we're going to start with an overview of Microsoft Graph and see how to access the Microsoft Graph. And then we're going to dive into how to access files and download files to and from OneDrive. The Microsoft 365 developer vision focuses on the user experience and their data. And as a developer, you can bring your application into the user experience with over 1.2 billion users of Office worldwide. This is a huge opportunity to provide a window into your application to connect their data to your application. There are currently over 850 million events created each month and a total of over 400 petabytes of data stored in the service that can add value to your users. The Microsoft Graph is the gateway to your data in the Microsoft Cloud, as you can see. The Microsoft Cloud includes multiple services and data types that we can take advantage of from Office 365, and it's all considered part of the Microsoft 365 platform. Developers can integrate the signed-in user's email, calendar, contacts, and tasks into custom apps. We can work with content in SharePoint lists, and files, and document libraries, and in OneDrive, channels and content within Microsoft Teams, and users within Azure Active Directory. There are many different services that developers can take advantage of in their custom apps. Many of these services have their own APIs that developers can interact with. However, this can be challenging to go to each of these individual services with their individual endpoints. Each API may have its own permission model, which means that they can have individual access control configurations. Different endpoints for each service mean our custom application will need to obtain an access token from Azure AD for each of the different endpoints. One of the benefits of Microsoft Graph is that it serves as a proxy endpoint to all of these other services. Microsoft Graph encompasses things such as Office 365, Windows 10, Enterprise Mobility, and Security, and it brings all of these different services under one unified endpoint, graph.microsoft.com. The advantage to using Microsoft Graph is that it allows developers to have just a single endpoint, a resource, which means you're only going to need a single access token to authenticate the different services. Each service still has its own individual permissions so that everything is still secured in an individual way. A single endpoint makes it easier for developers to build applications. Microsoft Graph also enables easy navigation of entities and the relationships between these entities. And while there are many different Microsoft 365 services, such as OneDrive for Business or Outlook for contacts and calendars, these different entities are related to each other. And these relationships are in the Microsoft Graph, which makes it easy to navigate from one entity to another, even if it's across different underlying endpoints. Microsoft Graph supports two options to authenticate. One option is with Azure Active Directory only, or a work and school account. And the other option is converged auth, which means that you can either use Azure AD or a Microsoft account. And in this case, you can use the exact same code in the Microsoft Graph, the same endpoints and the same SDK to get my files, either if they're in OneDrive Consumer or in OneDrive for Business. And the same is true for calendar, contacts, and email in Outlook.com or in Office 365. And the nice thing about this is that the data that you fetch is all dependent on the login of the user that signed in. So you don't have to write special code or use different APIs or endpoints to get the data for consumer accounts or for business accounts. As previously stated, Microsoft Graph supports both Microsoft accounts and Azure AD accounts, also referred to as work and school accounts. Nothing in Microsoft Graph's APIs or SDKs is unique to the sign-in process. The code is the same, and the sign-in determines which services in Microsoft Graph will access. If the user is signed in with a Microsoft account, the files endpoint maps to the OneDrive consumer endpoint, and while the work and school sign-ins map to OneDrive for business. This is just but one example. To determine which account type your app supports, or if it supports both, you set a specific setting in the associated Azure AD app in the Azure AD Admin Center.